speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. In the times of Corona, patients have been caught between a rock and a hard place. That is between the hospitals and insurance companies. Because many a times, insurance companies are not ending up paying what they should be paying to the hospitals. And a lot of patients end up having to make cash payments out of their own pockets despite having cashless insurance. Of course, a lot of people have also approached the courts, and the insurance regulator, in my view, is also being approached on this issue. But till then, a lot of people would have faced a lot of hardship, because in the end, we must remember, in India, a lot of people cannot cough up lakhs in cash if asked immediately. It's very difficult, especially when these times when everything is shut down. So how are patients suffering on the one hand? There is also the issue of inflated bills that's troubling quite a few people. And how should the insurance industry address this problem? Because in it lies the trust that we have in the insurance industry. When a country, which is one of the most underinsured countries in the world, is trying to get more and more people to get insurance, the trust in the insurer must not be eroded. That is very important. To discuss this important issue, I have with me Advocate Aman Hingorani. He joins us today. I have Advocate Gagan Kumar with me. I have Advocate Amir Singh Pasrich with me in the show today. I have Wing Commander Ajit Kakkar. He's an advocate with us today. I've got Advocate M.N. Sharma joining me today on the show. Thank you, all of you, for making time at a short notice on Legally Speaking today. May I request Advocate Amir Singh Pasrich to start the discussion with an opening explainer on the subject and how patients are suffering.
Well, thank you, Tarun. You said it actually before me on the underinsurance in India. That is one of our biggest failings as a nation, and I think it's been one of the problems faced in this country for the last perhaps since 50 years, and that is because for every operation in the West or in developed countries, you have an extra a layer in between liability and the person who suffers. So automatically that layer comes into force. That layer is insurance, and it also costs. It's part of the cost of living in every country. In India, we have a very funny view of insurance. We consider it under necessary, not so necessary. Can we do without it? Firstly, people don't insure. They have an inbuilt problem. And the second problem is that they are not encouraged to have insurance for basic needs. Now, why is that? Why are they not encouraged? Because of our court system having a huge pendency. So everything is dependent on the insurance company's return on that. Well, I insure myself for my health. Whatever I get, wow, I've done well. If I go to hospital and they pay 50% of my bill, I'm saying, I'm good. My insurer gave 50% of my bill. And in the West, the question might be that if I insured myself for 6 lakhs and my bill is 6 lakhs, why is the insurance company not paying at least those 6 lakhs? Well, they'll turn around and tell you, have you seen clause 342, which in subclause P and annexure C and schedule G will tell you that you were supposed to not spend more than 1% of, for example, your entire insurance on the hospital room. So you say, but I thought I had covered myself for that also. No, that's an add-on you didn't take. So this is just one example, but there are many. And what you've seen now with this order of the IRDA, which just came out, and these are deriving from a matter that's continuing in the Delhi High Court, is that we're suddenly unraveling the problems of insurance. I've been there myself. I'm sure all the speakers here have been there, including you, where they just don't give you the discharge slip and the discharge summary. They hold it to their chests like that because they're busy waiting for the insurance company to say yes. And then I'm sorry to say, there's a serious problem here also. Doctors first inflate the cost of every surgery. So something that will cost 10 or 11 lakhs, for example, I just took a number, will be put at 16 lakhs. So that an approval comes for 12, and then they say, look, we're within the approval, and then the insurance company will pay 8, and they'll tell you, look, be grateful they paid 8, could you pay the balance 3? So this is one of our systems. And the second problem is a lack of honesty. I'm sorry, but across the board, we are suffering the consequences in India of corruption and dishonesty when it comes to hospitals. What hospitals are doing, and I'm not talking about the best ones or the worst ones, but almost across the board, there is some level of inflation, some level of over-reporting. There's not an inherent sense of honesty, and this is not to take away from the great doctors we have. They're saving fantastic lives. I mean, I know my doctor to talk to me at 4:30 in the morning yesterday because my wife has COVID. And this is the kind of commitment they have. Unbelievable people. But that doesn't mean that the whole system is not in place for an overhaul. Sorry, one last thing. I'm sorry to take so long. I'll stop and don't come back to me if you don't want to. But I do want to say this. This is important. We have a system in India by which hospitals are still run as trusts. The same is true of schools. I think it is better and more important for us to be higher and more have a higher level of transparency and allow them to be run in the full commercial way, subject to serious regulation, rather than doing it the other way around. Or let the state run them. Let the state run hospitals that are of that world-class standard. If they can't do it, and the state is not capable of it, then hospitals must be allowed to either make profit subject to conditions. But the way that it's currently, resting, that's a problem. Thank you.
Very well. A good set of points shared by you in your opening comment. I'll go to Advocate Gagan Kumar. Mr. Gagan Kumar, your opening comment on this issue of patients getting caught.
Thanks, Tarun. First of all, thanks for bringing all of us together and touching upon a very pertinent topic. I sort of disagree with Mr. Pasrich's view. In my personal view, and I'll start from the point that healthcare has been under the directive principle, pursuant to which all the exemptions, tax exemptions, or the concessional land prices at which hospitals, or for that matter, even schools are land is given to them. It is from the taxpayers' money. And therefore, in my personal opinion, I have always been against privatization of these two sectors, education and healthcare. Reason being, if you look at the current scenario, most of the corporate hospitals are getting funding in the form of private equity or financial institutions investment, and where the revenue is gauged as qua per bed. So unless one bed is empty or the new patient comes in, normally the hospitals have been developing this tendency to keep the bed occupied because the patient is by and large taken care by the insurance companies, which is resulting into inflated invoices, which insurance companies are not honoring to a certain extent. So in my view, the problem lies in the corporatization of education and healthcare sector per se. Having said that, obviously, the idea had always been that it's a service to humanity. And talking in the context of current scenario, where we are going through a monumental crisis, it obviously nauseates anyone to know the abhorrent profiteering which some people are doing in this sector. So the kind of pain which a patient is going through, first finding a hospital, and if you look at the profile of the patients in the current scenario, not everyone is coming from a high net worth individual or family or a well-off family. So as it is, their insurance coverage is minuscule or a bare shell. And on top of that, if they were to shell out lakhs of rupees on a per day basis to get a bed, obviously it drains out, and then many a time patients are not in a situation, or the families are not in a situation to take care of those patients, and we are losing many precious lives.
All right, thank you, Tarun, for inviting all of us here. And I do share some of the views which my friends before me have said, but I have a little different perception of this. You see, the healthcare sector in general, hospitals in particular, there's a systemic need for regulation. And it's beside the regulation which we currently know of. This pandemic has given new kind of problems for us, which were not seen before, because it was being, as rightly Amir said, there's under coverage of insurance and all that. And I believe we are talking about the private sector. We're not talking about the government sector. So I'm confining myself to the private sector only. So as far as the private healthcare is concerned, the point is that right now what we are facing is an unprecedented situation. So we have got reports where the hospitals are even not caring, are not even honoring the cashless treatment. They're refusing. You see, they are saying that even we don't care. I mean, and there have been public interest litigation has been filed, and the government and the High Court had to actually come down, and the IRDA actually took a suo motu cognizance also and directed all the insurance companies to honor, and also the hospitals. So this is something which is unprecedented. So basically, it's a systemic malaise which has come up. But the issue is that there is lack of transparency in the hospital system. You see, there is a particular study which has been done recently by a regulator called Competition Commission, which has come out with it that there's a lack of transparency. There are vertical agreements which the hospitals have with the diagnostic labs and all, which is already going on. But now this pandemic actually has given rise to situations which were not known before. Because the hospitals are also not able to cope. I don't blame them to an extent. B, the very basis of commercialization, the monetization of the plight of the people now. You see, the people are dying. And if in this situation you feel that the hospital will keep the body, even there are news about the bodies being kept. I just read a news very recently that for 5-6 days the body was kept. They did not even declare that the patient is dead. This news came, is so horrific, I tell you. So the point is that there is a need to actually overhaul the whole entire system of the hospitals in this country. The vertical arrangement which they have, there's no transparency whatsoever. You have to go to the same pharmacy, you have to go to the same diagnostic lab. Everything is well planned. And then we got the issue of branded generics, which is unique to India. This doesn't happen anywhere in the world. So aspirin tablet, my God, it costs 100 times. So the study actually comes out and shows that 1,000 times even the profits are being made. That is in the normal circumstances. But right now, what is happening is mind-boggling, I tell you. The insurance companies are not even honoring, and the IRDA has to come heavily on them. So I just pity because people like me who are covered by the government system maybe don't feel.
I'm going to take the peg from your last comment and go to my next panelist, Dr. Aman Hingorani.
I'll be ready to take up again. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Hingorani, insurance companies are not paying, but do they also have a reason not to pay? Because do they feel that hospitals have overcharged?
Well, the COVID crisis has led to different kind of issues. If you see the grounds on why insurance companies are not normally paying, for example, that could be, take a situation, somebody has had a mild symptom and that person got hospitalized. The company will say that goes against the rules. Take a situation where somebody's got the symptoms of COVID, they're hospitalized, but the reports come that he doesn't have COVID because it's not caught in the RT-PCR. And it's a COVID insurance policy. Take a situation where an insurance company differs with the kind of treatment given. A person is put in ventilators for an undue period of time. There are other issues why the insurance companies are not paying. COVID unmasks many other medical ailments. A person may not even know he had a medical ailment. And when they filled up the form, they say, we didn't have this ailment. Now they say it's a long outstanding ailment. So is it covered under this insurance policy? Then we have the whole issue of capping. You have the general council rates. So under the reasonable and customary charge clause, a insurance company can say this, you might have this kind of bill from the hospital, but we'll do this partial settlement, we'll pay only this much. And then you have exclusions for everything, whether it's biomedical waste, sanitation expenses, they've charged separately. There's standard exclusions in the sense that nobody's going to pay you for nebulizer kits, steam inhalers, thermometers, and so on and so forth. So there's a dispute between overcharging, capping of rates, general insurance council rates, and so on and so forth, which effectively means that the policyholder is left at a lurch. And there's nothing much you can do about it because what are the remedies? Take a situation, a policyholder is told, even if you're cashless, and that's another side of it. Many hospitals, even if it's cashless, is saying it may be cashless, but you're going to pay cash. So there's no regulation out there. So
you mean they refuse to admit unless you pay cash?
They say despite, and that's the reason you've had notifications coming out from and press releases from IRDA saying you have to honor your service level agreements. So the point is that suppose there is a situation where the initial introductory comment that the patient are caught in between. What can a patient do if he cannot, if the claim is for about 15 lakhs and the insurance company says I'll pay 5 lakhs or 8 lakhs? Can a common person cough up 7, 8 lakhs? And then what is the remedy? For the benefit of the viewers, the remedy is too time consuming for that person to get the money immediately. It's ineffective, it's illusionary if you want to put it that way, because what do you do in a normal case? You would go to your insurance company, go to the grievance cell. If that turns sorted out, you escalate it to the integrated grievance management system of the IRDA. That doesn't work, go to the ombudsman, 3 months to give an award. If mediation fails, go to the consumer court, go to the civil court. The person wants money then.
So the system is loaded in favor of the hospitals and the insurance companies, you mean to say?
The point is that the system does not come to the rescue of a patient who wants money to be able to either get discharged or even take back the dead body. They need the money there and then. They can't wait. And that's the reason why you need to have an overall of the entire system. In several countries, the governments have chipped in to say we'll reimburse insurance company. Let them be more liberal. Let them be more liberal in handling these claims.
Point taken. I'm going to Wing Commander Ajit Kakkar here. Mr. Kakkar, I want to know from you that what Mr. Pasreet said, that discharge of bodies and even discharge of patients being withheld, insurance companies not settling. What will you advise someone who's in such a lurch? And in your view, where should we put the blame for the mess that we have landed ourselves in?
Thank you, Tarun, for having me on this show. First, I will start. The patient having cashless health card issued by the private insurance company or maybe by the state government or the central government by way of CGHS card or to the veterans by way of ECHS card. All these categories are facing particular problem. 3 problems they are facing. First problem is to get the admission in the hospital. Number 2, to settling the bill from the hospital. Number 3, coming non-approval of the bills from the insurance company. So on the first condition during this COVID period, the government has made very clear that no one should be denied for the hospital admission. Coming to next 2 conditions, the insurance company and the government tie up with the hospital and they put a price cap. So once the price cap is been put, they can't charge more what is already agreed with. The difficulty comes when the agreement doesn't happen on certain treatment. Like in the COVID treatment, there is no specific guidelines now. So when they are charging exorbitant. When they are charging this, the person who is facing difficulty, as Dr. Hindorani has suggested, that I do not have the cash, because those who are having the insurance card with them or maybe the government employees, they do not have that much of cash with them. That is why they buy their policy well in advance. So when they go to the hospital, they find difficulty in paying the cash. Now the difficulty comes, they don't allow the patient to go outside. They don't allow the body to take away. So what happens? Either the person should be influential to make a negotiation with the hospital, or the person has to take a cash from somewhere, pay them first, and then settle their bills outside. Outside means after discharging from the hospital, make a reimbursement bill to the insurance company or approach the consumer court. So that takes time, but immediately the middle class person are not able to handle that much of cash which the hospital is demanding. So in these conditions, we are finding difficulty because there has to be a regulations, especially dealing with this pandemic conditions.
I'll go to Advocate Amir Singh Pasreech. Mr. Pasreech, how do we rein in hospitals from overcharging and also the insurance companies from meeting their commitment? Because the consumers, the patients, no matter what strata of society they come from, are being forced to cough up a lot of money. Doesn't matter if you have a lot of money, why will you even pay it even then? It's not, money is money after all. Why should you be forced to part with it something which is completely unwarranted, in where you're being overcharged and then insurance companies are not paying?
I don't think you can rein in those hospitals. I think only the government can, frankly. Where we stand right now is there is a Charter of Patient Rights. It was put out by the National Human Rights Commission, and it's available online. One of them, the rights, is that you can't detain a patient even for the bill, or if there's a dispute on the bill, nor can you withhold the dead body. Now, these dead body things were...
But we agree that this almost never happens.
Yeah, absolutely right. And this dead body thing was rather uncommon, so you didn't see it. And nowadays, unfortunately, we've got so many people dying that it's become common that they're holding back the dead body and not discharging the body until they've got their payment. There's a bit of a balance there to be struck, because sometimes people die and it's not necessarily the hospital's fault. The other side is Gagan Kumar Saab had mentioned, he disagrees with me. I think maybe he misunderstood one thing. I'm not supporting private enterprise here. I'm just making you conscious of one very important thing. Most of the hospitals that are private are trusts with this shadow of private limited companies behind them. And the private limited companies are managing all revenues. I happen to have dealt with them. I see, several hundred crores of revenue coming in to the manager, which is private. So what I said, and I'm reiterating, is that the government needs to lay down guidelines for private enterprise in the health sector. Now, that is not something that is alien and not known to the government. There's a bill that has been pending for a while, and that health bill has come up for discussion in the Supreme Court as recently as August 2020. And there's been no hearing after that. It's called the National Health Bill. And the Supreme Court issued guidelines in which they said they'd have a meeting of all the health secretaries, and they directed them to come up with common health enactments. The states and the union territories may be advised to come up within 2 weeks with a master plan, legislative and executive, taking cue from the already existing public health acts of various states and from the National Health Bill, which remains 2009. Can you imagine? 12 years ago, which focuses on the marginalized sections of society. And Wing Commander Ajit Kakkar put it in such perfect language in a way. If you refer to the fact that the middle class is the worst, if you ask us, you come up and say, somehow will you get out 1 or 2 lakhs or whatever, you'll get it from your bank, you'll manage, you'll be okay. But if you don't have the money, what do? You beg, borrow, or steal, and you get your father, looked after. And sadly, my clerk today, my Vinod, has lost his father. You have to see the anguish because they have spent every penny trying to save that life, this middle class family. And then the life is over. And then they are still saddled with a hospital bill and things like that. How can you cope with that? And why is our state not at least protecting? Don't protect the rich, fine. Don't help out the private sector in the hospital sector, fine. But deal with it in a sense that someone earning up to X amount is able to get healthcare for basic, at least a ward bed in some reasonably decent hospital, because the state infrastructure is, just collapsing. So at least there should be some system where if they paid insurance, they can get that benefit.
Point taken. I'll go to Advocate Gagan Kumar. I want to ask you, individuals going to court against insurance companies and hospitals is the answer, or do you feel it's government now which has to come in and decisively act?
Tarun, in my view, the way this pandemic is panning out, I think the moment, by the time this would, this trend would start facing south, we'll be facing another tsunami in the form of litigation.
And tsunami of litigation, sorry to interrupt you, Jagan Mohan Reddy, who's the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, he made a statement that in case you find hospitals overcharging, shut them down. He said it publicly to the media a few days ago. All of us would have seen it. He gave district magistrates that power, saying overcharging won't be tolerated. And the government has set some caps on charges. Please continue.
Yeah, certainly. So you see, the shutting down at this stage may not be an option because as it is, the medical or the healthcare sector is overwhelmed with the number of patients. But certainly, if the matter reaches to the court, and we have seen how Delhi High Court has taken strong objections to the hoarding of be it oxygen or supply of oxygen, it would certainly shake the conscience of the court. And looking at the astonishing greed, the sickening dishonesty, and cowardly betrayal of the trust by the insurance company for that matter, no court would countenance that. Look at the scenario. There is a situation where we are reading that an auto driver is ferrying the passenger who is a patient free of cost. He leaves the patient at the doorstep of the hospital and hospital fleeces him. Whom would you praise more, the hospital owner or the auto driver? So I think if the industry, and there are very handful players actually in the whole industry which is bringing this disrepute to this noble profession. I think if government doesn't intervene at this stage, it would be falling upon the courts to take immediate action.
Taking cue from what you said, I'll go to Advocate Aming Sharma. For going 4 kilometers, you're being charged somewhere between 15 to 30,000 rupees, and the government acted on it. For somebody who wanted to go to Rishikesh, the ambulance services quoted 90,000 rupees. That's a distance of 200 kilometers. So we have seen it was problematic to say the least. People have been troubled. Do you think government from the central level should take action on this? Not in the form of bills, but certain directions that could be issued?
Well, Tarun, I would say like this, that this is, as I said in the beginning, there's a requirement for the government to act. Litigations won't serve because the litigations are time consuming. And by the time you end up with a award or whatever, it is no use because you have to pay immediately. See, health sector in general, according to me, has been neglected. We have had a national education policy at the last. We keep on having education policies, but do we have a health policy? Amir pointed out to a bill which is pending in 2009. So there is a need by the government to regulate and cap, like they've capped the prices of certain essential medicines because of drug price control order. There is a need, according to me, for capping the services, whether it is ventilator service, because every hospital has its own free will, whatever they want to charge. As overpricing is definitely a concern. But right now, what is happening is pure greed that's taking over and exploitation of the people's plight. That you may quote the ambulance or whatever it is. I'm not going to that. The point I would make are very concise. 2 points. A, there is a need for, now Pradhan Mantri recently started, the Prime Minister started the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Mission, where up to 5 lakhs everybody is insured. But some states have not implemented it. For example, Delhi hasn't implemented it because we got a different government. So there is already a step has been taken to that direction. And we need something like Barack Obama Medicare we had in the US. Something like that is required for a country like India, which is not being done. See, what is happening is only populistic decisions are being taken. I'm not saying they're not good, but are they enough? They're not enough. So these will keep on happening. We need to national health policy, and the parliament should debate on it and come out with a very, very clear-cut regulations on the capping of the prices which are to be charged for each services, not only the medicines.
Point well taken. The government indeed has come with Ayushman Bharat. Another day we'll discuss the scheme. We'll go to Dr. Aman. We'll go to Dr. Aman Hingorani. And Mr. Hingorani, if a patient comes to you who's not been able to pay his hospital bill, will he be able to pay the lawyer's fees? Because that's also a point. He can't even get a good lawyer in this country. Somebody who has no money can't hire a good lawyer.
I tend to agree with this view that litigation may not be the best recourse. When we're looking at government intervention, I'm not only talking in terms of regulation to stop malpractices. According to me, it's come on TV channels and many people have written that it's only the rich and the middle class who have now discovered the terrible state of our public health sector. Nobody's invested in building up public hospitals. They're anyway on the verge of collapse even without COVID. So according to me, the government has to take, central government and the state governments have to take more proactive steps, not only in terms of regulation. It's no good having IRDAs pass at the instance of the High Court, say, well, as far as for cashless insurance, that convey the decision to the hospital on cashless treatment within 1 hour, 60 minutes of the receipt of the authorization respect.
It doesn't happen, we know it.
On the final, once you get the final bill, how much you're clearing. Those are piecemeal efforts. We need many countries around the world, they've had economic packages, relief packages for COVID. One segment of that is to take off the burden from the insurance company. And insurance company is also a company, at the end of the day, it can't go bankrupt. You need to have the government to step in to say, fine, we'll foot the expenses. So malpractices may be at the end of insurance company, malpractices may be the end of hospitals, but it is a common person who's suffering. And so for that reason, apart from regulating malpractices across all stakeholders, it is important for the government. They can't simply leave it to a statutory body like the IRDA, which is constituted under the 1999 Act. The government itself has to step in to say, we'll foot this expenses, we'll have a relief package.
Point well taken.
I've seen the national policy, and they need to, at least now, they should wake up to start seeing that we must invest more part of our GDP into public health.
Point well taken. Last 1 minute comment from Wing Commander Ajit Kakkar on this.
The first thing is I agree that with the panelists that the government has to take this step forward, because in our entire history of the independent India, we never had more than 2% of the GDP on the health sector. And why it is so? Because we never had such a difficulties. Now we have find it, we will be refining it. So the government has to take a first step. The second step comes to the making some kind of responsibility to the hospitals and to the private insurance companies. They sell their insurance because they say it is a cashless, but actually it is not cashless. We have to pay much of the money like this. And the agreement which they do it with the hospital is consumer is not aware. Consumer should be aware what agreement has been taken with the hospital. For example, I'll say, when I go to the hospital, they say, okay, your ultrasound is covered, but your CT scan is not covered. So where do I go? Either I have to change the hospital or I have to pay for the CT scan. So likewise, many clauses are being put into the insurance policies. Many clauses has been put, which is not shown to the consumer. Thereby, the consumer is finding a difficulty. So government has to come to the rescue. And secondly, if a person goes to the court, nowadays the court is coming very heavily, like we know it, the oxygen bench, what we call it. So the court is also coming for our rescue. But first, the government has to take a step.
Point very well taken. Thank you so much, Wing Commander Ajit Kakkar, Advocate Amir Singh Pasreech, Advocate Gagan Kumar, Advocate M.M. Sharma, Dr. Aman Ingorani. Appreciate you joining us today. I hope the viewers like the show too. Thank you so much. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.